Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Well, today I want to talk about a question that we get all the time, and I'm not even going to pretend that I can fully answer this question because it is really complicated. The question's really simple. Why is money so hard? This is something we say to ourselves. It's something we say to others. As an advisor, I would hear this all the time. Money is so hard. Why? Why is it so complicated? Why does it seem like it's always in my face? Why am I always worrying about it and stressed about it? Why is it so hard to understand? There's so many moving parts and the language around it is so confusing. Is that what makes money hard? Is it that we don't understand all the terminology and the way that the tax law works or way that different savings programs work or that the math is really complex? Is that why it's hard? Or is it something else? I think we have convinced ourselves that money is really complicated and confusing. There's actually a whole industry that I was a part of whose job it is to convince us that money is hard because of those complexities, that you need an advisor and a tax person and an estate attorney and all these different pieces because it's really complicated and you can't do this by yourself because it's hard. Now, I'm not arguing that you don't need those people. I do believe that those services are incredibly valuable. But at the end of the day, we complicate things because it serves us. As an industry, it is incredibly helpful that it's this hard to understand because it puts us as the role of expert in a place where we can add value to people's lives. And we do add a lot of value. But that's not why it's hard. As long as you have those people in place, or as long as you are in a situation where you can do the simple things, as long as you're doing the things that matter, like saving 10% at least of your income, giving money away generously, doing the pieces that we talk about on this podcast all the time, it's actually not that complicated. If you do it in a way that's simple, you still get to where you've made progress. You still succeed in this thing that's hard. And so if it's not the complexity and the math, it's not the arithmetic that makes it hard, what is it? And a lot of people fall on the camp of saying it in and of itself is evil. And that's why it's hard, that money is this terrible thing and we should avoid it, we should hate it, we should resent it, we should do everything we can to not have it. But we find ourselves still facing the fact that we live in a system that uses it. We still are functioning in an environment where money is just part of the human experience now. There were certainly seasons throughout history where money wasn't as important. Whether it was because we were an agrarian society or we were bartering with our neighbors, but now we live in a system where whatever we're doing to acquire anything that we want or need, we are using money to exchange for those things. And so to think of it as evil and to hate it or resent it or fight really hard to not have it while you live in a system that is built on it is really, really difficult to achieve. It leaves you in this really weird tension of not wanting this thing that you actually need to have in the system that we live in. I want to go a little higher in this conversation because I think those are the ways that we get stuck on it, that we think it's complicated because the math is hard, or we think that it's complicated because it's evil in and of itself. I want to argue that that actually isn't why it's hard, that those are all external. Those are all things that are happening around us. Those are things that are not really what's deep-seated inside of us, making this all so difficult. In other words, we're not having marital strife and arguing about money because the math is hard. And we're also not having marital strife and arguing about money because money in and of itself is evil. I would actually argue that money is actually neutral. It's not in and of itself evil. The Bible tells us very clearly it is the love of money. It is our heart posture towards money that is a root to all kinds of evil. It's not the money itself. And so we've got to stop coming to these conclusions that these externalities are what make it hard and that these things aren't neutral. They are. The math is what the math is. The rules are what the rules are. The tax law is just what it is. It's neutral. And money in and of itself as a useful exchange for value is a really important neutral part of the way the world works. It's efficiency. I don't have to trade 15 chickens for bushels of vegetables. I can just give you money and you give me vegetables. It's a shorthand to get us to a place where we can acquire things that we need. It's not evil. Those things are all neutral. We aren't. We are not neutral in the way that we think about money. We are not neutral in our approaches and in our emotions that we're wrestling with around money, and that's what makes it hard. It's not hard because the math is complicated. It's hard because the emotions are complicated. The thoughts that we're having about it are complicated. We find ourselves spinning in anxiety, in worry, in fear, because we are thinking of money as our source of provision. We find ourselves spinning in a sense of insignificance or unimportance because we see money as our source of status and what makes us important in the world. Those are not neutral things, but those are coming from us, from our very hearts. Money isn't causing that. We're doing it to ourselves. And so that is what I really want to dive into is how do we fight that? How do we come against these thoughts that trap us, that spin us out, and that create this constant theme that we hear all over the place that money is so hard? Because I actually think those become self-fulfilling prophecies. When we are telling ourselves stories that make money the thing that we need to be angry at, then we never actually do the work to address what's going on in our hearts. We never actually bring to the Lord the stuff that's really off center, the things that we're prioritizing over Him, the things that we're looking to money to solve instead of looking to Him to provide. We end up spinning incessantly if we keep telling ourselves a story that money is hard. What I would love for us to start to do, both for our own families and for the families that we may be leading if you are in church leadership, is start to challenge this conversation that those people are having with themselves, with each other, and start to call them to a more neutral stance on money so that they can start to really unlock what's making it so hard. And so let me walk you through some of the things that make it hard, that we do to ourselves. One of the most common things that I see is envy. We end up in a situation where we're seeing, and boy, in the life that we lead today, this is everywhere. All of the examples of people living a life on Facebook or Instagram or any of the other social media platforms that looks happier than ours, looks better than ours, and seems to be acquired with just a little bit more money, or in some cases, a whole lot more money. That money is the trigger, it's the ticket, it's the key that gives us access to all the things we don't have. That sense of discontent is rooted in ruminating on what we don't have. And that discontentment leads to us being so frustrated that we don't have enough money to buy ourselves happiness or some sense of satisfaction. And so we get stuck. And we think money is the reason that we're stuck. But it's our envy. It's our desire for more. It's our inability to be content. It's what Paul talks about, this idea of I have learned to be content in all circumstances. If we can get to a place where we can see our circumstances as neutral and then start to actually wrestle with the thoughts that we're having and take responsibility for them ourselves. I'm the one that's jealous. I'm the one that wants these other things. I'm the one that's coveting and is envious of other people's experiences. It's me. It's not the money. The other side of that is that I see people looking to money to make them feel safe. They want to be at a place where they have enough and they feel like they have enough and they convince themselves that they don't have to worry anymore. And so they hoard and they overaccumulate and they don't step into generosity because they're so focused on self-protection, and money is what makes them feel safe. And what you'll notice is this is what Jesus is warning us about, that it is our heart posture. It is this inability to serve both God and money, because you are either seeing yourself in a place of contentment and satisfaction and trusting that God has a story that's bigger than you, and that these things that are being put in front of your face aren't something to envy. They aren't something to fight for or to try to strive to get more money to acquire. We don't need those things. To get to a place of peace and satisfaction and contentment, it takes letting go of all of that envy and repenting of our envy and moving back to a place of satisfaction and contentment in the Lord. On the other side, we see money as our source of provision. It is what provides all of our needs and wants. It's what actually is giving us those things. And so it is so easy to fall into a trap of worshiping that as provider. And that's what makes money hard. We replace the role of God. We replace his rightful position on the throne with our own self-sufficiency rooted in having enough money. And just spoiler alert, that doesn't happen. As you accumulate more and more and more, you end up feeling like you still need more. We call it the floor and ceiling problem, where as you accumulate more, you get to a place where you never dreamed you would be, but now it's the floor. It used to be the ceiling, but now you're standing on it. Now it's what you're used to. And so it just still feels a little bit shaky. And if it goes down a little bit, you get this sense of anxiety that there's not enough, that I need to get more, that I need to get back to where I was. And so often it draws all of our attention to money, and we turn our eyes away from God as our provider, the giver of all good things. So how do we break these cycles? How do we get out of these pools of envy and anxiety and fear and greed? All of that emotional tension is rooted in our thoughts. We have a thought about the circumstance that we're in. We have a thought about whatever the situation is that we're facing, and that thought is what creates the emotion that we're feeling. It's what drives all of our actions. Those emotions are what move us into action. This is cognitive behavioral therapy, thoughts, feelings, actions. It's such a great concept because it crystallizes for us that we actually are the source of a lot of this dysfunction, that it's our own thoughts creating those emotions that driving those actions. And when we're stuck in these patterns, we can blame the money as the reason why it's so hard, but it's our own thoughts about it. I need more in order to be safe. I am in trouble because it went down in value, or I don't have as much as my neighbor. I need to keep up with them. Those are all our thoughts. That's not money's fault. That's not your neighbor's fault. It's yours. And when we take responsibility for it, we can start to challenge those thoughts. This is what I truly believe Scripture is telling us to do when it says take every thought captive. Examine it. Question it. Where is this coming from? What is this all about? Is this drawing me further away from the Lord? Is this pointing my attention, drawing my eyes to things that aren't of God? If that's the case, I need to capture it and I need to replace it with something else. I need to be attentive to what I'm paying attention to. so that I can make sure my thoughts are leading me closer to this experience of God as provider, not money, to this experience of satisfaction and contentment, not envy. Those are rooted in how we're thinking. And so one of the most important things we can do to kind of ease some of that tension of why money is hard is to first think of it as neutral. It is just this thing that the world uses to make exchanges. I don't find my significance in it. I don't find my security in it. I don't find my status and my importance in it. Those things all come from the Lord. Money is this neutral thing. And my job, our job as faithful stewards, is to apply that money, to put those resources to good use. And that's it. And so now we can start to question, is this a good use? So buying that sports car, is this a good use? Or is this actually about me getting to a place of significance or status? I'm not saying you can't drive a nice car. I'm just saying question why you're doing it. This house, is this moving me further into an ability to honor God and be connected to Him? Or is this about me feeling more significant and more important in my community, keeping up with some friends and making sure we have the same kind of stuff so that I feel good about myself? Is this saving that I'm doing? Is this preparing me for future obedience? Or is this really just about me trying to convince myself I have enough and I can stop worrying so much? When we recognize the thoughts that are motivating those emotions that are driving all of these actions, we can capture them, question them, and potentially replace them. Because the truth is, if we get to a place where we have captured those thoughts that are making money hard, and we replace them with more neutral thoughts that don't put money on the throne, then we are in a place where our heart can be more connected, more available to serve the Lord. And the decisions that we make with money become way less complicated, way less confusing, because we're not trying to buy anything with the money. We're not trying to get ourselves to a place of security or significance. We are just waiting for the owner of the stuff to tell us what he would have us do with his stuff for his kingdom's benefit. And that doesn't mean that all of this money goes to charity. It means that we're just being thoughtful about how we're applying these resources. We're not acquiring just to make ourselves feel better. We're not saving just to make ourselves feel safer. We are actually making those decisions in light of what it looks like for us to draw closer to God and be more connected to what He's up to and ready to partner with Him in that work. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you.